I am Imhotep. My name means peace. Born in ancient Kemet, I was the first recorded multi-genius, physician, high priest, and architect of the first pyramid. 2,000 years before Hippocrates, I was healing nations. The Greeks called me a god. Now listen to the griot's canvas, and subscribe.
Long before the Greeks whispered the name Hippocrates, before Pythagoras wrote of right-angled triangles, there was Imhotep, the African genius of ancient Kemet, a healer, a priest, an architect of pyramids, and the first recorded physician in human history. This is his story, the story they never taught us. History has been edited. We've been fed lies, that Egyptians weren't African, that pyramids were built by aliens, that Hippocrates was the father of medicine, while Imhotep, who lived over 2,000 years before him, is barely mentioned. Make it make sense. Why honor the student and erase the master? Imhotep, chancellor to Pharaoh Djoser, high priest of the sun god, builder of the step pyramid at Saqqara, the world's first monumental stone building. But more than that, the world's first physician, a multi-genius, centuries ahead of his time. Egyptian doctors, inspired by Imhotep's system, used diagnosis, prognosis, surgery, and over 700 medical prescriptions. Eye doctors, stomach doctors, bone setters, specialists, 2,000 years before Greece caught up. Hippocrates is often called the father of medicine, but when was he born? 460 BCE. Imhotep, 2700 BCE. You do the math. Hippocrates wasn't the father. At best, he was a student of a medical tradition pioneered in Africa. Imhotep never met Hippocrates or Pythagoras, but his legacy reached them through sacred texts like the Edwin Smith Papyrus, filled with surgical knowledge, through Egypt's temples, the ancient houses of life, where Greeks came to learn. The Greek gods of medicine? Asclepius was modeled after Imhotep. In fact, temples to Asclepius were built on top of Egyptian healing centers. And what about math? Pythagoras gave us the Pythagorean theorem, right? Wrong. Egyptian rope stretchers, land surveyors, used right-angled triangles daily, centuries before Pythagoras was born. Even Pythagoras' spiritual beliefs, reincarnation, soul purification, vegetarianism, were ancient Egyptian teachings passed down through Imhotep's priestly schools. Imhotep's ideas weren't lost, they were absorbed, transmitted through sacred institutions, embedded in Western traditions, echoed in every oath sworn by doctors who still invoke Asclepius. Here is a video from our Grand Master teacher Yosef ben Jochanan on the great Imhotep.
And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pie being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history, they call it, prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself.
Here we have the shrine of Imhotep. Oh my goodness, the father of medicine, okay? not Hippocrates, not what is it? Can't even say it. I'm rushing here. Hippocrates. No. That's the Greeks. See, again, they want to steal and copy. There was no Hippocrates, y'all. Okay, the Greeks stole the idea of Imhotep, gave it the name Hippocrates. So doctors take today what's called a Hippocratic oath. Okay, they got it from here. The shrine of Imhotep, the father of medicine. Notice him sitting on the throne there, holding the Ankh in his left hand. At his feet, you see the wash basin, okay, where doctors would scrub up before surgery. To the left of the wash basin is the operating table, okay? Above the operating table are the surgical instruments for surgery. To the left, far left, you see the maternity ward. Okay, of course, this is taken at the temple of Kumumbo. You see the maternity ward. You see the women sitting on the birthing stool, so you know it's a maternity ward. Above the wash basin, okay, is the prescription pad for writing out the prescription for those who are sick. You see, brothers and sisters, now you see why in the Oath to the Ancestors I say, oh, African ancestors who gave medicine to the world. It all came from there, y'all. Thousands of years. And I got to keep saying this until you get it. Thousands of years before the European even came out of the caves of the Caucasus Mountains.
There was a black man that was considered the African multi-genius by the name of Imhotep. Lived 2,000 years before Hippocrates put down his hypocrisy and claimed that he fathered medicine and philosophy. Imhotep was the original doctor. Imhotep was the original architect. He designed the first step pyramid of Saqqara out of his own mind. Imhotep was a master builder. Imhotep was a scholar. He was a scientist. Imhotep was the father of philosophy. So not only did he know how to build outside, but he knew how to build people from the inside. Imhotep, a black man, did that. Whenever the white man came with the study of the molecular composition and the atomic origin of all matter and energy, he called it chemistry. Chemistry. The word chemistry means study of chem, where Egypt's original name was Kemet. So when they wanted to study the origin of the molecules and the atomic structure of energy and matters, they didn't go to Europe and study. They studied in Kemet to learn the origin of all things.
He was not just the beginning of medicine, he was the soul of it. And though they tried to bury his name, his truth lives on in every hospital, every healer, every vow to do no harm. It's time we gave credit where it's due. Africa taught the world.
Africa was never civilized. But who gave them the right to define civilization? The same people who burned women for witchcraft, while Africans practiced astronomy, medicine, and more. Europe defined civilization as white skin, stone buildings, and gunpowder. So when they saw Timbuktu's libraries, Ethiopia's infrastructure, or the legal systems of Ashanti, they ignored it because it didn't look like them. But African civilization wasn't about domination, it was about balance, with nature, with people, with spirit. Europe colonized, enslaved, and conquered, and then called it progress. They measured humanity in how much land you could steal and how many bodies you could bury. So no, Africa wasn't uncivilized. It just didn't look like their version of power. And maybe that is why they had to destroy it, because deep down they feared that it was more human than anything that they've built before.
Imhotep not only made an impression on his pharaoh Zoser and the elites of the Third Dynasty, he left a legacy that would last for more than 2,000 years after his death. Europe was not yet born. Greece and Rome were not even on the radar screen.